assault not only the Second Amendment, but the 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights as a whole. About 2 weeks ago, I began the process of studying what we could do as a legislative body to preempt what was certainly going to be such an initiative from the Oval Office. And I, along with Senator Joey Hensley in the Senate, who will be carrying this bill, I have filed yesterday legislation that essentially makes it a crime in the state of Tennessee for the federal government to enforce and or try to arrest any individual who, by virtue of these executive orders or these laws, allows for Tennessee to be in violation. And what I will do is I will read the bill to you just briefly, because it's just a one-page bill, but it does bear noting. The bill says any federal law, statute, or regulation or executive order implemented on or after January 2013 shall be unenforceable within the borders of this state. The ban or restriction of ownership includes semi-automatic firearms, firearms accessories, or ammunition. 2, no public employee or public official or dealer selling any firearm in this state shall enforce or attempt to enforce any federal law, statute, rule, regulation, or executive order described. Any official, agent, or employee of the United States government who enforces or intends to enforce this law shall be subject to a Class A misdemeanor. Finally, the Attorney General or reporter shall defend any citizen of this state who is prosecuted by the United States government. The point of this, ladies and gentlemen, is that over a period of time, our Second Amendment has been under assault, and as a result, our 10th Amendment has been under assault. And the federal government doesn't get to unilaterally, without the consent of the states and those being governed, what our response should be. So, with the help of my colleagues in the House, Chairman Judd Matheny, Chairman Curry Todd, Senator Joey Hensley, we expect a number of co-sponsors in this bill. It's our attempt to push back on the federal government ever-increasing encroachment, not only on our personal liberties, but on our state sovereignty. And this is what we're going to do. We've had enough, and enough is enough. We're tired of cheap political antics, cheap props with using children as bait to gin up emotional attachment for an issue that quite honestly doesn't solve the problem. And so we're going to solve the problem, and that's what this in part attempts to do. And with that, I'll be glad to take a couple of questions.
Do you think this bill has longevity? Do you think it can make it all the way?
I'm very hopeful. I've been studying on this bill for 2 weeks, the language of this bill in particular for 2 weeks. The genesis of this bill, quite honestly, came from Wyoming. Wyoming filed a very similar bill. We used that language as a means to construct this language. We subsequently found out in the last couple of days that Texas has filed similar legislation, as well as South Carolina, Alabama, and Missouri. But Tennessee has always taken a leadership role in ensuring that not only our Bill of Rights were promoted and maintained, but were defended, and that's part of that process.
What hope do you have that this will pass any legal, I would assume a bill like this would face legal challenges. What hope do you have that this will actually pass?
Well, Scott, that's a very important question, because I'm not ignorant of Article 3 of the Constitution, which addresses the Supremacy Clause. But what I don't know has been challenged, and this is the thing that we want to understand, executive orders do not have the same force of law as when Congress passes law and the President signs it into law. So we're hopeful that it will withstand that scrutiny. We're willing to test that scrutiny and be subject to it. But the fact of the matter is an executive order like the 19 we think was signed today or that are being proposed does not have the same force of law as when Congress is involved.
Well, isn't part of this going to be addressed by Congress? And if Congress passes the law, wouldn't that override anything the state legislature does?
Potentially, Sam, but we didn't want to wait for Congress to do that. What we're hearing out there in America is that they want their state legislative bodies to not wait, but to take a leadership role in this issue. And while Congress historically has had the authority to do this, what we're hearing from the electorate is we want the state bodies to take a more proactive role in this particular issue, and that's what part of this is doing.
But aren't people across America, too, calling for more restrictions on these so-called military-style weapons and high-volume magazines?
I guess it depends on who you ask. I guess if you went to California, if you certainly listened to Governor Cuomo 2 days ago, you would say that was the case. But let me tell you something. Tennessee's not New York. And I represent Rutherford County, the 48th Legislative District, and the citizens of Tennessee. So we'll let Governor Cuomo speak for New Yorkers, and we'll let the citizens of Tennessee speak to the Tennessee General Assembly with regard to whether they think this is a good idea. And we're certainly going to be listening to them. And indeed, we've had listened to them. I've received hundreds of emails, literally hundreds of emails, asking us to do something along these lines. So this is in part response to that.
What do you say to the people who say safety of our children is more important than anything? What do you say to them?
I say that is exactly what this addresses, because it's a security issue. It is not a Second Amendment issue with regard to the Newtown, Connecticut problem. Newtown, Connecticut did not have a police officer or an SRO. Unlike Rutherford County, where most, if not all, the schools have an SRO, they didn't have such an issue or such an individual in their schools. So it was obviously not a gun issue, but a security issue. And indeed, when that young man was first addressed by somebody with the force necessary to take him out, he took his own life. And so they run from that kind of force.
I just want to make sure I understand something. Your bill specifically only relates to the executive orders. Am I correct in that? It would not relate to the congressional
No,
action?
it includes all of those, Guy. It specifically says any federal law, statute, rule, regulation, or executive order.
Well, do you really feel like, say, Tennessee Highway Patrol, for example, would be arresting FBI agents or ATF agents?
I am saying that if this bill passes, they would have the authority to do so, Sam. And that would be the intent of the bill.
So you're saying that that is actually possible, it's actually legal for this to happen?
I am saying we are going to discover whether or not it's legal. I wouldn't have filed the bill if I didn't think it would pass, and I wouldn't file the bill if I didn't think we'd had a good chance in a court of law. But ultimately, that's the process that we may have to go through to make those determinations. But I think the more important question is we're not going to wait any longer, the citizens of Tennessee and the Tennessee General Assembly, to allow the federal government to dictate to us, a sovereign state, what our response should be. That's the important issue. You know, the Constitution was framed as a federalist document, and that's what we're trying to promote here.
In the case of these high-volume magazines for rifles, what is the, say, sportsman's use of those? Because I know you can't hunt. I mean, you know, with your rabbit hunting, you can't have more than 3 shells.
And Sam, you're a rabbit hunter, so and so you understand. But you're making a very good point, which is based on a faulty premise. The Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunters and hunters' rights. The Second Amendment has everything to do with a state militia, and a state militia is not a conscripted government soldier. It's not the same thing. A state militia is citizens who are asked and who are authorized by the Second Amendment to bear arms. And so to equate the Second Amendment with hunting is inappropriate, because what the Second Amendment addresses, like the other 9 amendments in the Bill of Rights, is the tyranny of government. And that's what it was constructed for, to protect somebody like King George III from rising up and using government as a means to take away personal liberty and state sovereignty.
Well, do you feel like some people, do you feel like people need to be able to keep their weapons like these to defend themselves from federal troops?
I think people like these should be able to defend themselves from tyranny. And the point of the matter of fact is that was the point of the Bill of Rights. It had nothing to do with hunting. There's no word used for hunters' rights in the Bill of Rights. We are obligated and required and asked to keep and bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and have a blessed day.
Sam,